Hello everyone, welcome to what is unfortunately quite a wet Lakeside in Queensland for the final round of the Australian Touring Car Championships, round 8. As you can see behind me, the skies are quite overcast, although the weather coming from the northern direction is a little bit clearer than it was earlier in the day when we did have quite a number of heavy downpours. The track here at Lakeside has been cleared a little bit of the water by the races immediately before this final round of the Touring Car Championships, but still one of the most important decisions, of course, will be what tyres the teams choose to race on. And of course, that'll be vital as the race progresses, in fact, if the weather gets worse or if it clears. Alan Moffat, running at the front of the field, is the leading contender to take out the Touring Car Championship, but the other leading drivers, including Brock and Johnson, have threatened that they may well put the pressure on him for the full 35 laps of this race. It's the final round. It looks like Moffat has it in the bag, but we're not saying anything, of course, until the end of it. Let's cross up to Will Hagan and John Smales as the drivers prepare for their warm-up lap.
The weather decision could not have been more perplexing for the drivers here at Lakeside. Early this morning, it looked as though the rain had disappeared for good. Since then, it's come down very heavily and it's cleared again, and now it's just been dropping enough, with about 9 minutes to the start of this final round, for drivers not to be sure what it's going to do. They really have been looking at the sky, watching the cars in the previous race and the rooster tails they've been producing, and wondering, wets, dries or intermediates. The decision has mostly gone to intermediates. Dick Johnson rolling into position there with a great lap yesterday on wet rubber, equaling Moffat's time of 60.6, has gone to intermediates, as have the two Peter Stuyvesant Mazdas and Peter Brock. Peter Brock's time of 61.37 tenths of a second slower than the pair on the front row was done yesterday on intermediates, not wets. He says he hasn't got wets, and providing he doesn't get a dry line within the first 5 laps, he says his tyres will stand up well. There he is, third fastest time, 1 second faster than Greg Hansford, motorcycle racer turned car racing driver, and of course Alan Moffat's teammate. A very good time yesterday for him, a 62.3. The third row of the grid has John English and Ross Burbridge. John English in the Falcon 14, Burbridge in the Mazda 46. The row behind has John Donnelly, 15, in the big Falcon, and 28 is Barry Lawrence in the Commodore. The row behind that has Parsons in 11, and faster than he was Alf Grant in Dick Johnson's old car, 71. The row behind that, Peter Brearley in the Falcon number 7. Russell Worthington is in the 626 Mazda, which is a fairly standard car being prepared for rallying. Lester Smurden is in an Isuzu number 33 as they go out now on their warm-up laps. Gary Hinton in 16, Bob Thomas in 66 comprise the 15-car field for this 35-lap, 84-kilometre final round of the Australian Touring Car Championship, a championship which has been quite enthralling, as shown by the very good crowd at Lakeside here today, despite the inclement weather.
And the cars missing from the championship are a story in themselves. The two Nissan Turbo Bluebirds of George Fury and Fred Gibson. Fury at this moment still leading the championship on 160 points from Moffat on 146. But in terms of the point situation, Fury not really in major contention. His team thinks, and for that reason, and for the reason of preparation of their car for the Endurance Championships later this year, the Nissan Turbo team has decided to stay away from this Australian Touring Car Championship Grand Final, which they could still have won, and indeed could still win if Alan Moffat finishes less than 5th position. Also away from the race is the STP Roadways Commodore team of Alan Grice and Steve Harrington. They too deciding that as they're out of major series contention, there's no point in being here.
In fact, they are spectating, Harrington and Grice, at the Le Mans 24-hour race, where at the end of 7 hours, the Australian Vern Schuppen was half a lap in the lead from 6-times winner Jackie Ickx. The cars now on their second warm-up lap, and this is very much exploration territory. They're now finding out what the track's like and whether they might have made the right decision. There's no rain actually falling at the moment, but you can see that there's plenty of water on the track, and Dick Johnson, who knows the track probably better than most, says this track doesn't have to be very wet for it to need wets or intermediates. He said it would be diabolical out there on slicks at the moment.
In an enthralling practice session yesterday afternoon held in wet conditions, Alan Moffat took pole on 60.6 seconds on lap 9 out of 11 laps that he put together during the session. Dick Johnson went out as the rain started to threaten, and on lap 10, the very last lap before the rain really started to bucket down, Johnson equalled Moffat's time of 60.6 to sit beside him on the front row of the grid. Those are the grid positions.
That was the result of the 2 practice sessions yesterday, in which the first really didn't count. It was on a very wet track. The second was a drying track before, halfway through the session, after 15 minutes, the rain bucketed down. But in that time, they just managed to pull out these times. Everybody up to Burbage. Further down, the drivers didn't really improve on the previous day's times, or previous sessions' times.
Moffat has taken pole position 3 times in the 8 rounds of the Australian Touring Car Championship, the other times being at Adelaide International Raceway and at Surfers Paradise. Johnson and Brock Johnson has sat on 2nd position twice, the other time at Wanneroo, and 2nd position on the grid has been his highest position in the Australian Touring Car Championship. Brock in 3rd position has been in 3rd position 5 times in 8 races. He sat on pole twice and been on 2nd place once. So 3rd position also is the lowest that Peter Brock has ever started in an Australian Touring Car Championship.
Contrary to what probably a lot of people think, rain in this race would suit the V8s much better. Peter Brock, Dick Johnson probably would go better in the rain than they will go in the dry. Alan Moffat's car is not easy to drive in the wet. And the V8s, particularly Johnson's car, don't get the tyre distortion, which they tend to get in the dry, which will be eliminated shortly when they're able to go to bigger diameter and bigger section tyres. Johnson's effort yesterday was an excellent one to equal Moffat's time. Great determination, and he really loves a scrap. And the drivers in the first 4 grid positions all have very different tasks. Alan Moffat has to finish 5th or better to win his 4th Australian Touring Car title. If he does any worse than that, he doesn't win it. George Fury does, the rally driver, a former Australian rally champion on 2 occasions. Peter Brock can't win it, nor can Dick Johnson, so they are only worried about this race result and about the competition one against the other, and particularly against the man on pole position, Alan Moffat, who this year has particularly got under Peter Brock's skin. It really doesn't take very much to start Peter Brock talking fairly vehemently about that Mazda and Alan Moffat. But now let's watch the start of this, what should be an exciting 35-lap race. Away, power to the ground fairly well by Brock, but particularly well by Hansford.
Burbage is stalled on the grid, moving away slowly.
And Brock looking for places to go and has got nowhere almost. That won't get him there, although Johnson might cooperate. This is tremendous stuff. How's he doing it? He's in 2nd. Johnson will let him have it.
Oh.
Well done, everybody. Well done, Brock. Well done, Johnson. You see there Johnson cooperating and wanted Brock to get at Moffat. A beautiful save, though, by Peter Perfect. Peter just slightly less than perfect. Have a look at it. Out in the slop. Gone instantly. How did he get it back?
Up the hill now. Brock in 2nd position.
Served Moffat well, that did. From Brock Johnson.
1.1 seconds. Moffat back to Brock, and that's the break that Moffat wanted. Greg Hansford tucked in behind John English,
who too got sideways as he came down onto the straight out of Castrol Corner. Brock, look at his car bucketing around as he works it hard through the kink there. Here's a man determined. Fiercely, fiercely determined to win this race.
That's less than 1.1 seconds. Brock is catching Moffat.
Look at his speed through the carousel. He's picked up half a second on Moffat through that lone corner. No question of it. A tap of the brakes. He's going to run round. What he'd love to do is to force him into error.
A 69.73 second standing lap.
And look at Dickie sailing. The car in full flight there. Dick senses too the challenge. tucking in and saying, I'm with you all the way. This is big boys versus these dreadful little wankles which we hate. Cars with low centres of gravity.
Here he comes, and listen to the crowd.
That's great stuff, Brock, and look at the way that boy's working the car. Tremendous stuff from Peter Brock. Oh, you're seeing a wonderful display of driving here by Brock, but you're also seeing Moffat determined not to get sucked in, not to make an error, not to risk the championship. But this is a masterly display of driving from Brock, who, if anybody ever chomped on the bit, well, Brock is doing it now.
Johnson has had Formula One race mechanic Wayne Eckersley working on his car. Johnson all year has thought that he's been plagued by rear-end suspension problems on the Ford Falcon XE. Eckersley had one look at the car in the last couple of weeks and decided that the problem was in the front end, and he's markedly improved the handling of the Ford Falcon of Dick Johnson. It's handling better at this meeting than it has all year.
Brock's lead is 2.5 seconds, 2.5 in little over a lap, and he's just done a lap of 61.34 on a wet track. This is great stuff. Have a look at a master at the wheel. Could be called a cigarette company battle as well, because there are now 4 of them in Australian motor racing, with the linking with Alan Hamilton recently of yet a 4th brand.
Here comes Johnson.
Johnson comes at Moffat. Moffat won't risk it, he'll let him through. .39 Brock, so just a touch slower than the previous lap. Of 253 laps in the 7 rounds till now of the Australian Touring Car Championship, Brock has led 107 of them, you might be surprised to learn. Moffat 76, Grice 60, Fury 7, and Johnson only 3.
Greg Hansford moves up onto the tail of Alan Moffat, some 2 seconds, 3 seconds perhaps in arrears, covering the boss. Remember, Moffat wants the Australian Touring Car Championship, but he must finish higher than 5th position, and Hansford will be all important in making sure that happens.
And while Moffat is playing safe to an extent here, as Brock comes down to a 60.9 as the track dries, while Moffat is playing safe, not wanting to get into what would have been a ferocious argument with Brock, and a fairly tough one with Johnson as well, and a bit of an untidy one, as you can see, he also must consider the possibility that if he has to make a pit stop, he needs all the time he can beforehand. So in other words, he can't throw away race position, as Peter Brock laps Russell Worthington's 626 Mazda on only the 6th lap. And that says something really about the wisdom of running those cars. They'll be lapped 6 times in the 35-lap race, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Brock down off the hill, Castrol corner, and a man reveling in the conditions. Johnson is not any longer in 2nd position. He's coming to the pits. So Brock's lead over Moffat now is 7.3 seconds. Johnson doesn't like his rubber, I'm not sure.
They're not working on the rubber, they're talking to him.
Under bonnet. And Brock has gone back to a 62.5, so not track conditions, he got held up.
Hinton in the Commodore moves right out of the way.
streaking up the hill with a whole pile of power on board. This is delightful stuff. And he's a pretty analytical guy to talk to too, a guy always very approachable, as we found earlier today when we were talking to him. So as we watch his glorious progress around the 2.4 kilometres of Lakeside, let's hear what Peter Brock had to say.
Well, Peter Brock on the second row of the grid. No doubt we'll try at the start to get out there as fast as you can at the lead.
Yes, a bit of a disjointed practice session yesterday, and I was in the pits, unfortunately. At the time, the track just sort of tended to dry a little bit near the end, which meant we missed out in the front row, but
you've been getting good starts, though, haven't you?
Yes, I have been, and the track's looking as if it's going to dry out fairly nicely, although it's going to have some wet patches on it, and it's going to be important to sort of get a break, so I'll be looking very much at getting off the line quickly and trying to either establish a lead or being in a good attacking position. It's going to be an interesting race, though, I think, with the track the way it is, because it's going to be a lot more in car control, probably, than what there is if it was here a perfectly dry day.
How difficult is it going to be, the dice between you and the big Ford of Dick Johnson?
Hard to say, because we haven't been able to show our paces. I would have expected our car should have been faster than the Ford around here, but Dick's done a bit of homework, and his car does seem to be working better this weekend than what we've seen it working. I mean, obviously the car to watch is Moffat's Mazda, followed by Hansford. I think that those two are going to be the problem cars over the race distance. Dick's car is going to be particularly fast over 5 or 10 laps. But I think beyond that it's going to probably suffer from the old problem of tyres falling apart, much the same as ours does, but ours tends to be about 5 or 10 laps later.
Looking at this as the final round of the Touring Car Championships and the amount of testing that you've done during the year, what's your next stage as far as preparing for the new homologations? Do you virtually give this car away and go to something new, or what?
No, you can put the bits and pieces onto the existing cars without too many troubles at all. We will be building a new car because, unfortunately, John Harvey's car, the old number 25 car, has been doing the brunt of the testing behind the scenes during the year, and it's getting to be a little bit sad and sorry now. It's been knocked around a fair bit. So we're building a new car. So John will probably use my car, and I'll have a new car for the Endurance Series. But we'll be welcoming the break so we can instigate these new moves that Cam's have announced. The only problem is we don't quite know what they are at this stage. So we're waiting. But I think it'd be fair to say that Ford and Holden camps this weekend are sort of going through the motions, because we know it's our last run under the existing regulations which control a lot of suspension bits and pieces and wheels and tyres and goodness knows what. So this weekend we'll give it our best shot, but there's better things around the corner.
And driving hard, like we've seldom, I think, seen Peter. Well, we have seen Peter Brock driving really hard this year, but in these sort of conditions, this is absolutely superb driving from Peter Brock. He has opened a lead to 15 seconds from the car in second position, which is now Greg Hansford. Greg Hansford has passed the boss, Alan Moffat, 15 seconds behind Peter Brock. There's Hansford. Bad news for the Ford fans. Dick Johnson has come out of the pits, done one slow lap and gone back in and put the car away. And now Hansford extending the lead on Alan Moffat.
Well, one wonders whether Moffat's got a problem, because obviously Hansford hasn't the experience to lap faster than Moffat, and I don't think Moffat would want him in front. So whether Moffat's trying to preserve a different compound tyre to what Hansford has fitted, or whether he has some other sort of problem, we'll have to wait and see. But it does seem curious. And if Peter Brock reckons the way he's driving is going through the motions, well, I'll come and watch him anytime. He's getting the front wheel up in the air through this section, admittedly helped by the bumpiness of the track, but thumping the suspension up and down and really working it so hard and giving us a glorious display of how to drive a touring car quickly on a very difficult track under very difficult conditions. The lead of Peter Brock has now gone out well past 15 seconds. To Hansford, it's 17.8, and to Moffat, it's an additional 4.5. That's 22.3 seconds back from forward from Moffat to Peter Brock. Behind them, and a long way behind, is 28, Barry Lawrence's Commodore. 11, David Parsons' Commodore. 71, Alf Grant, Dick Johnson's old car. Down one lap to car number 7, Peter Brearley's Commodore. Followed by 15, John Donnelly, Falcon. Greg Hansford doesn't know much of the way around here in a car, but in a motorbike he really knew how to operate.
In fact, he still holds the 250cc Grand Prix record round here, set in 1977 on the Kawasaki.
From Hungry Corner up to the tight right-hander at the top, Greg Hansford and Warren Willing, in fact, used to monowheel the whole way up there. As we go back to the race leader, Brock. This section, monowheel all the way up here for Hansford and Willing in their heyday.
Brock now flashing his lights at a pack of 3 cars in front of him. That's Gary Hinton about to be double lapped by Peter Brock in only 13 laps.
Moffat falling a long way off Hansford, who is 19.3 seconds behind Brock, with Moffat an additional 6.7.
Comes up now to lap 5th and 6th positions. The Tasmanian dairy farmer, David Parsons, now dealt with by Peter Brock. In front of him, Barry Lawrence in the Commodore, about to receive exactly the same treatment from the master of Holden cars in Australia, Peter Brock.
Back from a 3-week tour to Europe, where he did a little bit of chasing up on possibilities for his race car, but mainly he was checking on the possibility of different vehicles out of his Holden Special Vehicles division, and took in the Detroit Grand Prix, chatted with the opposition car company's Edsel Ford, and had to talk to a lot of people over there. Got back last Wednesday. And while Peter Brock circulates, the man that to some extent allowed him to be in this position, Dick Johnson's up in the commentary box. Dick, what happened to put you out of the race?
Well, unfortunately on the start line, and it was a bit late to do anything about it then, the power steering pump seized up, and it's that heavy on the steering without the pump working. I tell you, I just couldn't steer it.
You were able to jump out of the way of Brock, though, in his exciting first lap moment.
Yes, he was a bit desperate there for a while, which is very unlike him, but however, we just sort of I thought that I might be able to continue on with the power steering pump inoperative, but it was just too much.
It was a good bit of catching by Brock to actually get the car back from, what, 40 degrees to the direction of travel.
Well, if he had gone any further, I might have helped him on the front guard.
And what are the conditions like out there, Dick?
It's very, very slippery, especially down in Hungary, the old Hungary corner down the bottom here, where I had a bit of a slide, and it made it very dangerous. Actually, if the power steering is not working, you can't correct properly, and you run the risk of making a mess of the car.
What sort of a race do you think Moffat's running at this stage, falling back behind Hansford and losing time all the time to him in 3rd place? Is he just being very careful?
I think he's being very, very careful and making sure the car finishes, because it's pretty obvious he doesn't want to get involved in any dices with anyone. And I was sort of playing the waiting game on him, even without the steering, and it was quite surprising, actually, that I did pass him.
On the basis of the way the track is now and the way Peter Brock's going, which is very, very hard, how do you think his tyres will last on the intermediates?
I think Brock is on Michelin's, which he's had for quite some time, and those tyres should be quite all right. I think Moffat's the one to watch, and maybe this is why he is going slow, because he started on a wetter compound tyre than most of the other cars, and the track is drying out.
and in fact,
John English.
not very far in front of Alan Moffat at this stage, with John English just bouncing his Falcon off the Armco a couple of times. So it reinforces the danger under these conditions, Dick, of somebody else bringing you undone.
Well, particularly in that corner, Will, because there is a change of bitumen halfway through the corner, and the car tends to get very sideways as soon as you hit it.
We've been watching Peter Brock a lot, and he's been really showing us a masterful display of how to drive on pretty difficult conditions. Describe your way around the circuit through the kink, which is pretty exciting.
The kink is very exciting because they have little rivers that run across there, and in the braking area, this particular part of the circuit here is the carousel is not too bad at all, except for this little exit bit right there where the car tends to get onto another change of bitumen where it gets sideways.
What about the way Brock's car's moving it around? Obviously he's working it hard, but is it jumping around too much?
It's very bumpy out there, and it looks as though he's got his car set up reasonably hard. He's down into this is pretty slippery around about here, and coming out of there it gets a little bit dicey. Especially where people run off the track like that and leave mud all over the place.
And when you bang the power on pretty hard there in third?
In third gear, and you pull top around about down here, but in the wet conditions I think you'll be holding third through this corner here, which is coming onto the straight.
Just stroking it through a bit.
Yes, he's doing it pretty easy, and he wouldn't be taking any unnecessary risks.
Well, now that the end of the Touring Car Championship has come for you a little prematurely, about 30 laps too early, I suppose it's looking forward now to the plans from August onwards for the endurance races.
We certainly are looking forward to the new tyres and wheels that we will be getting after this meeting, because this is the last meeting we will do on the 10-inch wheels, and because I think it'll prove something to a lot of people that for quite some time now we've been having trouble, which most people thought was the rear end of the Falcon, where in actual fact it has only been the tyres and the wheels.
Has this come from Wayne Eckersley sort of helping you sort the car?
Well, basically, we haven't done much to the car at all, right from the day that we built it.
But looking at the problems with the car.
Certainly. And, like, you can just hold the back of the car and give it a shake, and it's like a big jelly bean floating around the place. And in wet conditions, it doesn't sort of show up as much because there's not as much load on the tyres.
Dick, finally, what does the change of rigs mean? You've had to buy new wheels. Is that a big expense?
Yes, well, we're spending around about $10,000 on wheels because we've got to sort of re-wheel the whole car, which is reasonably expensive. But
how many wheels do you need?
We have 20 wheels, all up, 10 fronts, 10 rears. But I think you will find that will save you money in the long run, because we're not frying up tyres at the rate at an alarming rate during these sort of races.
All right, Dick Johnson, well, thanks for the way that you've entertained us this year. Some people mightn't appreciate from your lap times and race finishes and positions how hard you've worked, but we saw some heroic stuff from you in practices at Wanneroo. We know how hard you've been trying, and how the sort of lap time you did yesterday showed that your heart was still in it right to the end.
Oh, we'll still keep fighting, Will, and I can assure you that in the endurance rounds that we'll be sort of well up with it, and I know damn well that we'll have a nice little car to drive.
Laps completed by Peter Brock, followed by Greg Hansford second, Alan Moffat third.
And the interesting thing is that Peter Brock is in a very good position to actually lap Alan Moffat in this race. Brock has been slowly pegging back Moffat, who's some 30 to 35 seconds behind Brock, or if you put it another way, only 25 seconds in front.
Behind those three still, Barry Lawrence's Commodore in fourth, number 28, David Parsons' Commodore fifth, number 11, sixth, Alf Grant, 71 in Dick's old Falcon, 46, Ross Burbidge, a Mazda, so 3 Mazdas in the first 7, and then yet another lap down, 2 laps on the leaders, is number 16, Gary Hinton in the Commodore.
The John English car has been cleared from this section of track where it crashed into the guardrail barrier, and it now allows the drivers a free run onto the main straight.
Peter Brock early in the race, a 61.3 from the timekeepers compared to a 62.3 for Hansford, a 63 for Moffat, and a 62.7 for Johnson. And as Alan Moffat gently, cautiously works his way around the circuit, hopeful of his 4th touring car title, which indeed it will be if he finishes in this position. He won the title first in 1973, followed by 76, and then doubled up in 77.
In fact, my timing was a little bit off. Peter Brock is in fact 4.5 seconds behind Alan Moffat and closing fast.
And Peter Brock's just done a 60.5 on a track that is very nearly dry now on line. Dry, let's say, in some parts. That's on the straight, so in the corners it wouldn't yet be dry.
There they are, the two of them together. Alan Moffat almost 1 lap down, heading for a win in the Australian Touring Car Championship, and obviously not extending his motor car.
An enormous amount of contention about this car through the season, and about the driver as ever, because the driver is the sort of person who dedicates himself so fiercely to the task in hand that he does arouse all sorts of sentiments among other drivers. But it's been compounded by the recent allowance by CAMS, the motorsports governing body in this country, for the Mazdas to receive what's called a 13B engine. It's a different motor with slightly larger capacity and about 30 horsepower more officially. Some drivers say it's worth anything up to 50. And many people say you won't be able to see which way he goes in the James Hardy in October at Bathurst. Peter Brock, on the other hand, said yesterday, I still think the Commodore's the car to beat on the allowances that we have been given. New rubber. They will be trying to put bigger diameter and width tyres under the guards of the Commodore. There's not a lot of room there, nowhere near as much as in the Falcon. Johnson, without any question, is going to 19-inch diameter wheels on the rear, the same size as the Porsches run in endurance races, and he'll have an enormous choice of compound. Moffat has to stick with the tyre size that he's got because he's a very light car, and the bigger the car, the wider the wheels and tyres that are allowed. But Brock says that at Bathurst, the Commodore will be very good. It certainly will be a different car to the one we've just seen lap Alan Moffat. 24 completed by Peter Brock. Brock, too, has won the touring car title 3 times. He took it from Moffat in 74. He took it from Moffat in 78 after Moffat's pair of victories in 76 and 77. Then he backed up again in 1980. Peter Brock's had quite a deal of motorsport experience. People tend to think of him as a specialised saloon car race driver, but don't forget his brilliant win in the Repco trial. He ran a 24-hour race at Spa Circuit, Francorchamps, Belgium. He ran rallycross with a supercharged Holden Tirana. He's run sports sedans. He's run, of course, in recent times, Bob Jane's Chevy Monza, a very quick car, and he's piloted it absolutely beautifully. And he fiddled some years ago with not much backing with a Formula 2 car. No question he could have gone on to other things, but the sponsorship, the backing was in touring cars, and so that's where he stayed. And he has an enormous amount of ability, a most analytical driver, very cool and calm, and can tell you after only a few laps in the most violently quick cars like the Chevy Monza, all sorts of aspects of the car, what the front end's doing in terms of tyres, what the back end's doing, what the aerodynamics are like, how it's braking, and so on. And many people, of course, would be completely fazed by the sensation of speed. But the skill, of course, of being a racing driver is being able to slow down the action to keep yourself cool and calm and analytical, and to plan what you're doing and make sure that everything you do is planned. Greg Hansford, second place. The only man unlapped. Coming up to lap the 626 Mazda, number 100 of Russell Worthington.
Hansford has not yet been signed on by the Peter Stuyvesant Moffat Mazda team for the endurance races later this year, but it seems only a formality because he's performed so well in this motor car in the 3 starts that he's had, including this one. He's had a 3rd, a 6th, and looks almost certain to take a 2nd place here. He currently holds 12th place in the Australian Touring Car Championship, despite not getting to start in the first 5 rounds.
The Mazda of his team chief, Alan Moffat, running in 3rd place, looks set then to become the first Japanese car to win the Australian Touring Car Championship in the 24 years of its operation. It's been won 4 times by Jaguars, 11 times in all by Fords, once by a Ford Cortina, 5 times by Ford Mustangs and 5 times by Ford Falcon, 8 times by General Motors products, 4 times Tirana, once each for Commodore and Monaro, and twice for Chevy Camaro. But it's still a few laps, 7.5 from the finish, with Brock now finishing 28 in a 35-lap race. And Alan Moffat has to finish to take the title, because George Fury has 160 points in the Nissan Bluebird Turbo, Alan Moffat 146. Peter Brock still getting the inside front wheel light through there. The tyres obviously holding up pretty well. Interesting to look at the people who've won the Touring Car Championship too, and of course it's awarded to drivers. We talk of the cars there only in the sense of what they used to win the title. But Pete Gagan stands as the dominant figure in touring car racing with 5 titles, from Bob Jane 4, Moffat and Brock 3, 2 for Norm Beachy, 2 for Dick Johnson, and then David Mackay, Bill Pitt, Colin Bond and Bob Morris 1 each.
The Australian Touring Car Championship this year has resulted in some spectacular motor racing, probably no better epitomised by this man, Peter Brock, who, while he may not have won too many of the races this year, in fact he's only taken 1 win, 3 seconds and 1 ninth, and 2 did not finishes, has, I think, been the driver of the series. He's really given it everything he could possibly give for the whole series, and has driven against quite some odds indeed. And he's really showing right now, while this final round of the Australian Touring Car Championship regrettably is ending in a whimper after some magnificent racing that's occurred earlier in the season, Brock is giving it everything he's got right now, and it's just magnificent to watch a man like this driving the way he is.
In fact, early in the season, Brock was a little bit out of contention and dominated by the new STP Roadways team of Alan Grice, backed up by his co-driver, the son of the team manager, Ian Harrington. That's young Steve Harrington. But what had happened was that the Marlborough Holden dealer team had fallen backwards. Bruce Nowacki, cruelly struck down with a very serious illness late last year, saw the team really fall behind the 8 ball. They had some unreliability, which was a bit untypical, and they certainly seemed to be missing development. But then they got their act into order, and we have seen, indeed, some superlative driving, but none better than what we're seeing today. none better at all as he comes round now, 4 remaining. And the fact that he's not being challenged doesn't matter one whit to me, because it's a delight to watch the way that he's working Commodore 05 here today. The script for touring car racing gets rewritten from 1st of August. And we've got quite a bit of motorsport for you before then on ABC Sport. But we'll also be looking at the endurance round from Oran Park. We'll be looking too at 3 rounds of the Australian Drivers' Championship. That's for single-seater cars, as David Parsons waves Brock through and moves out for him. We'll be looking at those. We've got some motorcycling too, so we've got quite a number of meetings for you in July, as well as an off-road meeting, the Maclay 1000 from up Kempsey Way. See the dry line now, where with the car's maximum speed they're most effective in cleaning the water off the track. The slower the corner, the less the water is cleared. And Brock there feeds the throttle in gently. As you can see again, dry line developing. Settle the car a touch there. Hard braking here and even there. Dry line developing, certainly on the exit you can see. This is a man reveling in the opportunity to go out in a blaze of glory. He said actually, when they were making the tyre decision less than 15 minutes before the race start, I've had these tyres for ages and I'd love them to go out in a blaze of glory, because with changing wheel sizes they'll be no good to me. And they certainly are. A lap of 61.7 then for Brock. 2 laps remaining.
7.2 seconds the gap between Peter Brock and Greg Hansford. That is that Peter Brock is only 7 seconds away from lapping Greg Hansford to lap the entire, although small, field in the final round of the Touring Car Championship.
One of the more interested spectators of this telecast is indeed George Fury at his farm in Talmalmo near Albury. 1,200 acres and 1,000 head of sheep, and I think he would have pulled himself away from the back shed and the fencing and the crutching to attend to the set to see whether Alan Moffat finishes today, and therefore whether Fury loses the title to him or whether Alan Moffat takes it from him. 1 lap now remains. And if the Nissan team decided not to come for some good reasons, because they have to rebuild 2 Bluebird turbos, build a Pulsar turbo for Chris Cole, Chris Gibson, Fred Gibson's wife, and also a new Bluebird turbo. If the team wants to be away, I can tell you that there's no way that George Fury wanted to be out of the fight today. He was very disappointed as Hansford now, and therefore the entire field is lapped by the flying Peter Brock, this on his final lap, in a superlative demonstration of mostly smooth driving, barring a slip out of the carousel in the first half lap and a beautiful recovery. But not only smooth, but just fiercely determined. And a thoroughly deserved victory that takes him to 128 points in the Touring Car Championship, which will leave him 3rd. Fury has 146, 7 rounds competed in out of 8, and until today was the only driver to have run every lap of every race of the Touring Car Championship.
Race time 36 minutes, 10.13 seconds for Peter Brock.
And coming down towards Castrol Corner is perhaps the most interesting car in the field in terms of the championship. And that's Alan Moffat, who, when he crosses the line, becomes, as he does now, for the fourth time, the Australian Touring Car Champion and the champion, of course, for 1983, Alan Moffat. There he is.
Moffat
So,
moves to 166 points in the championship, just 6 in front of George Fury on 160 points, from Peter Brock, 128 points in third position.
well done, Alan Moffat, too. We haven't seen much of him as he cautiously made his way to his 4th title, conserving car and tyres and trying to keep out of trouble and threat from any other competitors. But one has to say, no matter how he gets under your skin as a competitor, as a spectator or whatever, one has to say there is no man more dedicated and who works harder in many ways, responses, than the 43-year-old Canadian who, shortly after the series started, became a father for the first time. And in the sense of his dedication, the time he's put in, and the way he's worked himself and his crew, he has thoroughly deserved the title. There's no question of that. A lot of people query the suitability of that car as a touring car, with its low centre of gravity, low frontal area, 2 doors and minimal pair of rear seats. But throwing that aside, the man at the wheel has really done everything and more than most people in touring car racing. But let's go down now as Alan Moffat pulls up to the race winner with Bob Vincent, Peter Brock.
Well, Peter, congratulations on what was a magnificent display of driving under what must have been difficult conditions for you.
Well, it's very nice actually to have a race where the tyres don't give a problem and it's sort of every man for himself. And yeah, I really enjoyed that because I thought I don't get to lap these Mazdas very often, so I'm really going to go for it today.
You got both of them?
Yeah, I got both of them. I saw Hansford in front of me near the end. I thought I'd better put him behind me too.
Well done, a tremendous display. You mentioned that the only thing wrong with the car was that there was no water in the windscreen washers.
Yeah, that's about right. I turned the wipers on before and tried to squirt it, get some. I thought I'd better leave well enough alone, but it's a bit difficult to see the last few laps, but it was okay.
Another great start, and it's been a good finish for the season for you, hasn't it?
Yes, we didn't start off too well this season. I don't know really why. I think we were trying to do too many things, and, well, I mean, you always got to try new things, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But we certainly finished off with a flourish. I don't think we could have got the Holden to go any faster as it transpired. I think that we had to concede that the Mazdas were faster on the tighter circuits. This is a swan song for the car, in fact all the cars and their present guys, and I just wish it had rained all year.
Well, congratulations, Peter, and good luck in the Endurance Championships. Just talking about that, you must be at least a little bit more confident now with the new regulations coming through on that performance today as well.
Yes, particularly on the tighter circuits. Amaroo, Oran Parks, Surfers Paradise, Adelaide Raceway, you know, they'll help us. Bathurst, we haven't had a problem anyway. But I think we'll have some even racing, but we've got a lot of homework to do, and we're calling on Larry Perkins and the boys here to really get some work done. In fact, I must thank them publicly too for the work they put in this year. After the dismal start, they really did very, very well. Congratulations,
and we'll see you in the Endurance Championships.
Shall do.
Well done, Peter. Of course, the man of the moment at the moment is Alan Moffat, who, although he finished down the field in this final round of the Australian Touring Car Championship, did in fact take the championship for 1983, and you can hear the cheers in the background. Excuse me. Well, Alan, the tactics were what? Safety first?
Well, that Commodore was going very, very efficiently today, so...
it was going particularly hard, wasn't it?
It was going extremely well. I don't like making excuses, but we had a little fiddle this morning because we thought, will it or won't it? And I just went the wrong way. We weren't going as well as we were yesterday in the wet. But the Commodore was going extremely well, and of course Peter has no trouble in the rain.
I don't think you can really offer...
when they power by you on the straight, there isn't much you can do about it. It's funny how fast they get going so quickly, isn't it?
It was a great first corner, wasn't it?
Well, that was a situation where Peter knew where he was going, he could see where he was going, and I just went where I had to go.
I don't think you have to offer anybody any excuses, Alan. It's been a tremendous season for you, and well done on winning your 4th Touring Car Championship. And it's a bit of a first also, first time that a Japanese car has, in fact, taken the championship under the Australian drivers.
Right, and the first rotary-powered car ever to win it. So we're very pleased for Mazda, and my thanks to Peter Stuyvesant, who, along with the Mazda distributors in Australia, have made it all possible. And naturally my crew, who've worked very hard and under what we'd say adverse conditions here this weekend, Bob. And I guess Oran Park wasn't much better last weekend. I'm happy that it's all over. I'll think about going fishing myself now.
Alan, could I just ask you another question? And I know it's on the minds of others, seeing Greg perform so well today, running second. What is his championship or potential now for the endurance championships?
Well, we haven't exactly decided what we'll do there. Naturally, anything we do, he's in the making for whatever we do. But he came up on me today and went by me. I was very pleased to see him going so well.
Well, let's hope we see the double performing well during the endurance championships, and congratulations.
Thanks a lot to everyone at ABC.
Coming out on top for the first time in 6 years, taking a title. Peter Brock won 2 races. Alan Grice won 2. A great series. We'll be back with you with the National Panasonic Formula One round in July from Adelaide Raceway.